Hello YouTube! Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the third actually of our videos on ETC Team England. Today we're going to be looking at the coaching corner, or the coaches, and we've got some coaches from the Team England team. But first I'll go over to Hyper-G, my partner in disguise. In crime,
disguise.
I don't know. Yeah,
crime and well,
what does he normally look like?
Not a very good disguise.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, crime is usually more successful if you're in disguise, so I'll take it. You know, not that I advocate any of that. Hey.
But yeah, there he is once again, sandwiching in the guests so that they can't escape for the next 45 minutes or so.
Which side I am? But
yeah. We'll get straight into the introductions. We have the two coaches here. First of all, we have Raf. How are you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you for coming on. You're a coach of Team England, and is it your first year of coaching or more?
Well, it gets a bit confusing with COVID. So
Yes.
It's the first year actually going out there for it. I guess probably would have been the third year or so. I don't know. Who can keep track of time anymore?
Right.
But yes, first year flying out as coach.
As coach. Does that insinuate that you were a player before?
Yeah, I played, God, I've actually lost count. All the 9th age ones, and the last Warhammer Fantasy ETC. So
Sure.
half a lifetime ago it all started. But got the MRs.
That's it, absolutely. And joined with you one of the second of three coaches, although I'm not sure technically there's three coaches, I don't know.
Leggy's officially the princess of the team.
Yeah, Leggy who's not here today. But we are joined with Tom Wooden.
Oh,
How are you?
how's things? Very well. Warm, hot, sweaty,
It is, yeah.
and it will have nothing on Italy. So
Wait, I thought you said hot, warm, and sexy. Okay, sorry, different
that
string.
goes without saying.
Yeah, both can mean the same thing. So we'll go down.
I want to know first of all who's chief coach.
Well, the princess, obviously.
Yeah, Leggy.
I know. Oh, come on! I want
The guy
against
who's
each other right from the
delegated.
Oh, we're going to play rock paper scissors in 2 weeks to see who's the water boy and who gets down. So it's we might televise that.
Absolutely.
Yes, please do.
We're happy to live stream it if you wanted to.
Well, how about Raf? So we've got 2 warm-up games, right? There's the Tea Party and then there's the Ashes. I'll be head coach for one of them. You could be head coach for the other one, whichever one we do better on.
I'll have the least responsibility possible for the Ashes. I think is my number one.
Probably sensible. All right.
Most stressful games of the year, but yes. Yeah.
They're ridiculous. Yeah.
But yes,
We've already got them working against each other.
I know.
Excellent.
It's perfect. So yeah, I mean, you've been coach for officially since the start of the year. Tom, have you been? Is this your first year of coaching as well?
Yeah. So similar to Raf. So I was supposed to be playing. At sort of the last ETC that was supposed to happen, but then got cancelled because of COVID. So I was playing that year, and then with COVID and basically with a shift to online games and War Table and everything, that's just I couldn't do it. It wasn't me. I wasn't getting any useful games out of it. So I realised that I wasn't going to be able to put any kind of. I wouldn't be able to put in the time, effort, and the amount of games required from somebody actually wanting to play for Team England.
Yeah.
So I sort of explained that to Tank and said that I'd be more than happy to come on and coach. And he was more than happy to have me. So
great. And in terms of coaching and things, for I guess more to do with sports, and there's an argument whether wargaming in sports is a thing as well, but we won't go into that.
Oh, it is.
For anybody that's sort of watching this video and going, "What do you mean coaching? It's a tabletop miniature game." What sort of role does the coach have within a team setting?
Well, so basically, I'm Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
So it's
better
all about fitness for the team, then, right?
You can tell, right? It's,
And the winning smile in the interviews.
I mean, feel free to cut in, Tom. But I mean, I guess coaches in the ETC have a number of roles, and I guess the function breaks down to sort of pre-event and during the event, to sort of distinct phases of the experience. I mean, I like to think that it's really about the institutional memory of the team. So every year for well, every single year that since ETC started back a decade plus ago, there's always been new players on the team, despite the old boys club moniker that we often have. And the ETC is a beast rather unlike anything else. And I think having some people that have seen it, especially so in a year like this, there's even more change than has been before.
Yeah.
Combination of COVID, a whole bunch of people having kids, and different crew stepping up with their game means that you have a lot of new blood. And it's just so early on, it's useful having people who have basically done all the mistakes you could possibly make at ETC. I think that's a large part of it. I think you can go however prepared you are, however much you rate yourself, you get there, and there are other people who are every bit as good, rate themselves every bit as much, and you'll do something stupid, and it will ring with you. And it's hopefully someone listens to your stories enough and don't copy that. So a large part of that's continuity. Sort of,
I just want to jump in a tiny bit there. One thing that you're right. So if you go to the ETC and you're brand new at it and you make some mistakes. Like if you're at a singles event and you make a mistake, you've just shafted yourself, and fine, you don't get the trophy today. But if you do it at ETC, then you can really feel like you've let a lot of other people down. And a big part of coaching is to just let everybody realize that we are part of a team here.
Sure.
I've had some terrible times at some ETCs where either like dice haven't gone my way or I've made a silly decision or something, and I feel like the weight of the world on my shoulders. And just a kind little word from a coach, sort yourself out. That kind of thing can really help, because it's such a fraught situation that everybody else is playing their games as well. So your other teammates, they're sort of emotionally, mentally busy. But a coach can just be someone who's freer at the time to help you just sort of talk through a mistake that might have been made, or indeed help catch the mistake. I'm sure we'll go into things like timeouts during the event. But yeah, like Raf said, it's a big split. Your role is very different pre-ETC and then actually at ETC.
Sure.
And just to round up the before the exciting stuff happens part of it, I think it's about being a sounding board. Input into suggestions on what people should be training on. I mean, it's a fine line, right? Because however, coaches traditionally are people with experience, and people probably quite rate themselves, but you have to remember you're not playing, right? Yeah. It's someone else. It's not about getting someone to do what you want them to do on a move-by-move basis. You can impart your views on sort of historic issues that England have had going abroad. They're
Don't take orcs and goblins.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
There's a lot of very consistent things that happen with England at ETC, and it's trying to, either successfully or not, sort of counter those and give advice, but really remember that the people that are playing are the ones who are, honed on the knife edge of battle, who've been doing this. Some of these guys for sort of 3 years waiting for this, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it's not about sort of imposing our will on it. It's really some people need and want more input than others.
Sure.
Yeah.
But and also a sounding board for Tanker. When we've had people had to drop out of the team and stuff, sort of that broader managerial piece of trying to work out who can do it and who would be the right fit with the team and things like that.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole other thing when you actually get out there. But
in the run up, you kind of can be like all things to all people. Really, there's some people that they will hound you, like you, not necessarily you just the coach, but you the team, on minor list change things. How do I spend this last 100 points? How do I spend this last 200 points?
Sure,
and they're just constantly agonizing over it. And then there's other people that will essentially not post any of their list thoughts at all. And then you've got a role in both those cases. On the one hand, you need to sort of sometimes tell somebody like, you're maybe a bit too close to this, take a step back.
Sure.
Just here's like an outsider perspective. Because every time that I give advice to someone, it's almost always from the perspective of like the army that I'm currently playing.
Okay.
Like if I'm playing Beast Herds and somebody is struggling with their UD list, and I'll chat to them about their UD list, I'll be talking to them almost subconsciously about, you don't want to take that because counters all over the place. There's not counters all over the place, they're just counters in the Beast Herd.
Sure.
So as a coach, when you're not on an army, you haven't been living and breathing a single army, you do have a little bit of a better perspective. And then conversely, the people that aren't putting up list ideas and everything like that, you can just say, why don't you try this sort of, off the wall, and try and like push them to being a bit more experimental if they're,
It's actually quite interesting, the phenomena among wargamers. If you get ETC team, I guess up to 8 of them in a room together, but even if it's, let's say, 4, and you've had a day of practice games and everyone wants to talk lists, it's quite rare that people actually listen to each other.
Sure.
It's a lot about like, I'm going to run this, and it's sort of someone nods and then just comes in with, actually, more chariots, and you're like, what? And, and it's fun. That's half the fun, is everyone's getting very excited and talking about their stuff. So another useful thing about having people that aren't actually playing is that you can try to force yourself to actually pick one of them to listen to, at least.
Sure.
And try to be a sounding board. And I think a lot of it depends on the personality skill set, I guess, of the individual. Because I tend to be much more interested in the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
And that's partially from being slightly, very rusty as far as the mechanics of the game go, and sort of the nuances of the current meta, for example. But for me, it's much more about trying to impart, the big picture lessons of where we've always gone wrong at ETC before, such as not being aggressive enough or time management, right? A big thing.
Sure.
So the good thing about having 3 of us is that you get different levels of info, different types of info for different people, which is, I think, being unusual and good, right? Because we've been lucky in previous years to have one person, if that. So it's management by committee.
Yeah, no, that's great. In terms of you guys as well, because how have you found being a coach over being a player? Like, because obviously it involves a lot less playing, but a lot more, I guess, looking at the bigger picture and listening to people and things like that. How have you found that as the transition, I guess?
I think it is irritating at the same time as being unbelievably calming.
Sure.
Like you're just that you're a competitor. You want to do as well as you can in all things, and like making a conscious decision to take a step back, like I said, because it's just not able to devote the time to it. I'm not going to be able to go to the tournaments and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You do kind of feel a bit like, oh man, I make the right decision. People they seem to be having loads of fun. It does seem to be really good. But on the other hand, it is such a weight off your shoulders to be able to play a game just for the sake of playing.
Sure.
To not be thinking have those 3 units? Do I need those 3? Should they be 2? That one that item equipment on the Lord, is that the right way? It's so nice to not have to agonize over everything that you do, and to worry about it. So a bit irritating to kind of see. Wow, they really are going for it. It is fun to be part of that really deep dive into the, nitty gritty of the lists and everything, and to really be living and breathing it. And then on the other hand, though, it's actually quite nice. I haven't played a game in 3 weeks, and I'm not letting anyone down because of that.
Sure.
Strangely egoless type situation, right? You kind of, however well we do, we're not really going to. I'll claim it, but
we're not going
to take too much credit for it. And however badly we do, that's all Tanker's problems. So
brilliant.
There's a certain amount of being a management consultant type thing about all this, where it's the actual results are arguably someone else's problem. No, I think it's interesting. I think it starts off being very easy, right? So it's all sort of, a lot of this was arranged many months ago in a normal year, arguably years ago. And then you're like, okay, cool. Instead of having to go to a practice weekend every month, I can walk the dog or try to win some life points or do whatever else I'm doing. I think as it gets closer to the actual thing, and you're like, we're also spending however much, better part of £1,000 to go out there, right? And you're not playing any games. And that feels a bit weird.
Get clearance for that one.
Yeah. Hopefully she didn't hear that. And there's this, tying on to the point that I think Tom mentioned, we're all very competitive as by nature, to having got to this point. Now that spikes depending on where you are in life and on your wargaming life and peaks and troughs, but there's always this there's a danger. You don't want to get in a position where you start resenting the people that are playing because you think you can do it better, right? This was arranged for a reason, and thankfully, none of us have had to step in for anyone sort of pulling out. We managed to, we had a couple of drops. We managed to shore that up. But it is, I guess you're trying to do the proud parent thing instead of,
yeah, sure.
You live and dream with someone else kicking that football, right? So
yeah.
And you try to prepare them as much as you can for the real world.
And another part of the coaching role, I guess specifically you, Raf, is hosting some practice weekends as well.
You live in a palatial mansion like Raf does.
But yeah, so I mean, we've sort of mentioned it a few times and sort of saying about practice weekends, but how important are practice weekends, and what do you, as a coach, look for the players out of these practice weekends that you come up to?
Well, we just had one. I think, like Raf said, it's pitfall things. My personal biggest pet peeve is timing.
Sure.
That it's really hard to go into what is officially like a practice game and rush yourself. You want to go into a practice game and get practice out of it. You want to try out the units, blah, blah, blah. You want to think over all your decisions and that kind of thing. And that's not always the best type of practice that you need. So a lot of on like a practice weekend, it really might just be, even if they don't actually need to, just barking at someone to hurry up. Yeah. Just telling them to make a decision. Make a decision, whatever one spell it is, just pick one now. Now, that one is the one that you're doing. That's it. And things like, there's been a team directive to make sure that you always know what the score is at any time.
Okay, yeah.
So to track the point. So just go around and just ask them, what's the score?
Sure.
And then, the players will know, oh, actually, I have been slacking on that for the last couple of turns, so I need to keep that up. So making sure that, you're ready for the big heat of the ETC. I'm not necessarily overly worried about, mistakes being made in practice weekends.
Yeah.
Obviously, now, like it's the pointy end of the spear kind of time. So yeah, obviously you don't want the mistakes. But I'd rather you doing all the other things right that you've been asked to do at an event. They can be a bit insular though. Like, the problem is you do end up playing the same people again and again, and and nobody wants to like. Do you want to play this really weird list that I think I might have some troubles with? But I want to have practice for that as well.
Sure.
That might have been the role for a coach to play. I didn't actually in the end because nobody had the army spare. But being potentially able to just play, sign of some random, like the last one that we had that was at Raf's. I played an army I'd never played before against an army I'd never played before, just because they wanted to get some experience against the army,
against the units and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you do what's needed, really.
So the challenge, I mean, I'm sure, others you've spoken to the team have probably touched on the value of practice weekends, so not to go over old ground too much. But the danger with wargaming is that it's a long process playing a game, right? And to actually get practice, you could play, Highborn Elves into Vermin Swarm 5 times, have the same result, but it's not actually what should happen. It's just the dice are dice.
Sure.
And it's only a sample size of 5, right? so it's, and a lot of players find this hard. It's really not about focusing on the result. Like it shouldn't matter in the practice if you just play 2 turns, and it's just a case of play 2 turns, see where the table is, talk it out, re-rack, see if you could do something different. If this is a positive matchup, getting into the mindset of, okay, your opponent should also know that it's positive for you, and therefore they'll act accordingly. So instead of in a singles event, where you'll get most of your other games, both sides are incentivized to win the game, right? Yeah. So you're going to try, even if you're pushing uphill, player skill, luck, the weather, will play come into it, and you have a chance at pulling off the impossible, quote unquote. The reality is at ETC, especially if we're doing well and we're playing against the good teams, and you're in a favorable matchup where you should be winning, they should agree with you on that, having looked at the pairings, and they will play differently, right? So you have to be like, okay, so what happens if I'm telling you confidently that I'm going to win this game, but they don't leave their deployment. In fact, they corner the other side of the table and they don't move, and you sure, you might win by mission, right? But maybe you've promised 17 points, and you're like, but I can't actually kill anything, and that's almost worse than, well, it's that sort of 4-point differential, as it were, as a completely hypothetical example, is huge, because not only could maybe someone else have been tried to be paired into that situation and get a sort of better result, but maybe a lot of people are thrown under the bus to get you that. So it's trying to engineer scenarios, and also as well as repetition. Right? So there's a certain amount of, you don't want to be classist about it. Classist is the wrong word. Ableist about it. But hopefully, people on the team are amongst the best 8 players available on the scene.
Yeah.
So consistent games against good people, and this is why a lot of the practice also online and international, try to get a lot of other players, is just good for the muscle memory. So it's, for me, it's about not focusing on, the last thing I want to hear is someone boasting about beating someone else 20-0 in a practice game, right? It's like,
sure.
Yeah, it doesn't, like,
it's not great. Also, we're British. Let's win with some class. But but it's about much more about what the learnings are of a game. So that's quite an interesting shift, because it can go too far. You can be too much like, well, I promised that I said I'd only lose slightly, so I'm not going to play this game. And it's like, well, maybe there's a chance to win. So explore, right? If you think the point Tom touched on about practicing with other armies is something historically we used to try. The problem is, if you read someone's list that makes no sense, or no one envisaged, it's normally Australia come up with something crazy. Yeah. The person that's come up with that has used that a lot. Sure. And me shoving it forward at you is not the same thing as the person who's used it a lot. So it's just interesting, trying to make the best use of that. For me, it's about timing. It's about, there's severe punishments for not getting our scores in on time. Sure, so it's like, these are good players. In a nightmare hypothetical, apart from the time actually spent rolling dice, you should be able to play a game of Ninth Age in an hour, right? You should just know what your army's going to do. Yeah. Just do it. And that's hard to, hopefully you're never in that situation, you have to. But it's... So are there one of the many lessons of ETC is slow plays a thing, and countering that. And
sure. Are there any steps as a coach that you put in to make people quicker? Or what sort of things you get them to think about?
As they sit down, that sort of thing.
Other than just going, hurry, for an hour.
It's tough, right? Because, and Tom, feel free to add, but people react to, it's a generational thing and everything else, but people react to being told / asked to do things differently.
Sure.
And until you've experienced some of the international play, it's really hard to envisage how little time you might have, or what you might have to do. I played a game at international team event where between what I'll call it the vanguard phase of his army and his first turn, it took basically 2 hours.
Right.
Wow.
And then he was trying to rush me to finish the game afterwards. And I'm like, okay. And there'll be a reason. Sometimes they're just very slow. Sometimes there's a very careful reason of he thinks he'll be winning turn 2. So if the game finishes at turn 2, he's won the round. And you don't want to be seen as a team that has a time issue with that, because then you start getting referees hovering around and maybe handing out punishments. So I like to ask players at least one round of a practice thing to just try to get a game done in half the time you normally would. Just go. Doesn't matter if you make the right decisions. Just go through the muscle memory of making a decision and going with it. But
it's not gonna be fixed by having, like, if you're a slow player and I sit you down and talk to you for 10 minutes about not being slow, all of a sudden it's fixed. That's not how it works. So it's about, again, it's touching back. It's trying to analyze. So are you making a mistake? Are you spending way too long in your movement phase? Are you spending way too long in your magic phase? All right, if you're spending way too long in your magic phase, well, then I want you to start thinking about your spells just constantly. Don't think about your army anymore. Just think about your spells. What spells are you taking? Why are you going to be casting A, B, or C? So you should absolutely know pretty much what order you're going to be casting your spells, how many dice you're going to go as soon as you flip the magic card. As soon as you know what the Veil token split is, you should know what your play is for your magic phase. And some people, maybe won't have that approach, and they will be a little bit more, no, I do want to think about it. And that's fine if they're able to actually think about it. Sure. A lot of people just have decision paralysis. So you try to take that decision paralysis away. Same with deployment. Some people can deploy off a cuff, and if that works for you, then that can work. if you're spending way too long and you're second guessing yourself, you're definitely getting in your own head. You're not deploying as well as you can, and it's because it's taking too long.
Sure.
Start just deploying in your mind.
It's symptomatic of lack of confidence. So
yeah,
normally it's
absolutely.
a case of you have to think about this matchup more before we ever get to the table. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's normally the case. And then the mechanical things are just because it should be said.
And I mean,
like, get your dice ready, like have it ready. You know,
yeah.
I mean, your units.
We're using like timing as an example, but this presumably that sort of technique can work for other things within the game. So not just how long you take on it, but maybe, like you said, focusing on one of the phases like magic or order of combat to get cutting out mistakes and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, an example from a very long time ago so the mechanics of which won't be relevant anymore. But back in the first ETC I went to, the German team back then were very, very good. And I remember talking to them about their practice weekends. And they'd have entire rounds of basically no dice roll. Where you just go, right, this unit is attacking this unit, so this should roughly happen. It just has happened.
Sure.
Or you'd get situations where people would be playing a normal game and the coach would be walking past and go, right, your
wizard's gone down a hole.
Yeah, even easier for your wizards to die back then. Your wizard's just blown himself up. Carry on playing the game. You're now 400 points down, your general's down, whatever it is. So there's two elements. One is getting comfort, and it all builds off that, getting comfort with what you have, and that is timing, that is just the mechanics of moving the army around, what it actually deploys like. And then once you've got that baseline, you can then start focusing on dealing with the unexpected. The guaranteed charge that doesn't happen, someone holds when they shouldn't, wizard dice, whatever someone throws too many dice at Comet again. And, so it is. So the mechanical part of it is important, but it's also largely down to the players. They're all playing, let's call it, 80 to 100 games before an ETC.
Yeah.
And we're relying on them to focus on that. And if there are issues, then they can bring it up, and we can try to find ways to help. But once again, they are playing the game, so it's about us helping them do it.
Yeah, and like Raf said earlier, these are, you hope, close to the 8 best players in the country.
Sure.
Yeah, they've been selected because they know how to play this game.
Yeah.
Two guys past it, giving you some clues about hurrying up with your deployment isn't going to change that fact. So, there is a certain amount of like backing them, and confidence gets knocked. You can go you can come up to one of the practice weekends, lose 3 games, and think you're terrible. The reality is, well, you've lost against the captain, an ex-captain, and the guy who got the highest points last ECC.
Yeah,
that you would never get that run at an event. Just pick yourself up from it and carry on.
And that ties strongly into the actual event, right? I think a lot of it's the confidence piece. Is making sure that someone isn't quietly to themselves, kicking themselves about.
Okay, yeah.
The example I gave before of, using old metrics. I promised a 17, I came back with an 11, and therefore we lost the round. And some people internalize that and use that as fuel to do better. Some people sort of get into their own heads. As I said, I've done every mistake there is at the ETC, and I know, right? So you go into the ETC feeling like God's gift to gaming.
Yeah.
70 plus games, averaging 17 plus points, and then you get there and something happens, and you're like, oh my God, and you just got smashed 2 games in a row, and you're like, oh crap. It's so awkward. And it'll be and then you try to force it and you get more mistakes.
Yeah.
And then it's also, there's a slight dark art of knowing when someone's not in the zone and being like, okay, let's instead encourage the pairings guys to focus on giving the guy with the hot hand the best chance they get to get points, and shifting that. But that's more of a
a team tactic thing, really. And it's like,
when you're a coach at a tournament as well, I mean, as the tournament's progressing, as well as picking up the guy who maybe isn't feeling great about themselves, is there also, to some extent, you've got to keep an eye on the players who are getting ahead of themselves and maybe nip that in the bud before it happens to stop them having a big fall before it happens?
So it depends on sounds like a cop-out answer. It will always depend on the individual, right? So we've had some of the best players to ever play this game in the UK. I won't name his name because you'll get all excited.
Yeah. No,
but he's getting married soon. He's a confidence guy, right? So the more he does well, and the more people recognize that he is damn good at what he does, the better he plays, right? So if it came down to, our future's on your shoulders, but you're on, you got the hot hand, fantastic. That's what he wants. Fantastic, right? Others, it can lead to just sloppy play, right? Because sometimes you will win a game because you shove your stuff forward and it wins, right? And then you've got a massive score and you're like, let's do that again.
Yeah.
And it turns out this guy is Spanish and it just kicks your ass, right? So it is about knowing the people, right? There's a certain amount of knowing that. And within the games as well, right? So I guess we transition to much more like on the weekend, but a lot of it is, once again, have to know the players. Some people like information. I used to always like knowing exactly where we were, information-wise, when I was playing. Some people don't. Some people's like, leave me the hell alone. I'm going to do what I'm doing, and only come over here if there's something really important that's happened. But it's useful because you'll get a player, not pointing names, but our mighty captain likes to complain very loudly if something very minor goes wrong. And if you're three tables down, and you hear his dulcet, dudley tones complaining about something, you might think he's gone completely down. And you're like, oh my God, like we were meant to win that game. It's all gone wrong. I need to make something happen. I'm playing out a 10-10 draw we're all happy with, but all of a sudden, oh crap, 20 points down from where we want it to be. And people play very differently in that situation. And it's about knowing who's going to sort of lose their head. And just fine, he's just lost his warhounds or something, but don't worry about it.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of like, if something does happen and all of a sudden we need somebody to get a few more points, and but so the way that a paired round, you'll have a general idea about how many good matchups you have, how many bad matchups, and how many toss-up matchups there are.
Sure.
And the good matchups, like Raf said, they might be like, right, you're going to get 17, and it's a fairly good 7. I've got to work a bit hard for it, but it's a 17. Now, that's someone who might be told turn 3 or 4, we actually need the 20. You do need to push for it a little bit more. And the way that you do that is very different, depending on who's the person there. If you just come over and sort of say to them, oh, we're in so much trouble, say to like the person getting married, we're in so much trouble, we really need that 20. Oh, could you bail us out? And then they'll be like, yeah, all right, I guess I can be the hero. That sounds like a wonderful thing to do. And then they'll go for it. Other people, you say that to them, and they will completely collapse. They'll be like, there's no way I can't handle that. I would have gotten the 17 playing like a nice, simple plodding game, but now I've got to like pull something out my arse. No way. So that person, you maybe say to them, ooh, actually, it would be helpful if maybe instead of the 17, you got the 18. Sure. I push a little bit harder so they don't know what, what's going on behind the scenes. I think, like Raf said, if we're sort of transitioning to what's going on the weekend, like it all comes through the captain, or it sort of should. The reality is he's got a game to play as well. Some play. So what first question was, what's the role of the coach? There's some teams where their coach is their captain. They have a non-playing coach, a non-playing captain come and be the team. And then you have other people who like literally have never played this game before, and all their job is to bring over bottles of water when it's needed, and ask people to just tell them a number, so that they can keep that score. So in an ideal world, the captain will be the one making the decisions. But if he's in the middle of playing a game, then you as a coach, you might need to be a bit like, well, I kind of have to, not take it into your own hands, but say you have that little word, actually it would be helpful if you were to come away with another couple of points.
Well, speaking of which, I guess that ties into the most important thing the coach can do at the UCC, which is the timeout with the player.
Yes,
sure.
And everything we talked about before ties into this, because ideally you don't want to have that conversation until you have a full picture of how all the other, generally speaking, you've seen these called out the deployment phase, if someone just spots something and wants to basically a permission to just go wild. But ideally at that point you're aware of how your players play, the situation across the 8 tables.
Sure.
And
before you go too much into the timeouts, for people that haven't gone to an ECC or a team tournament, what in this context, what exactly is a timeout, and is it the whole team, or
No.
what exactly is it?
It's so every player is entitled to a timeout with their coach in every round, and they're able to call it at any time they want. Normally at the ETC, the language spoken on the table is English, and you're not allowed to communicate in another language. So that
Thank
we're
goodness.
playing the Spanish, that the Spanish coach can't come around and say that guy's left that guy out of arc, you should probably charge it or something like that. So there's no other languages except from the timeout when clarity is important between the players and the coach. So the timeout can be taken by the player for any reason. I've taken timeouts to discuss spell selection. Because because of something that my opponent did in his spell selection or in his deployment or something along those lines, or his choice. And then you have timeouts when it's like, right, this is the big, I said I'm going to get a 17. Would it be the end of the world if I come back with a 15 because I've got a chance at a 20 here? That kind of thing. Those are the big decisions that will have massive implications that you need to check. Also, if you're in like a bind, there is also sometimes you just need a bit of a clear space. A bit of headspace and a bit of calm down, and just sound like Raf mentioned at the beginning, sounding board. Still the same thing, whether it was before the event trying to spend 100 points, or now we're at this situation. So what are you going to do? You're going to charge that, you're going to flee that next turn, then you're going to cast a spell. That sounds like a terrible idea. Why are you doing that? Explain it to me, kind of thing.
Sure.
Crucial part of all this, just to take it a step back, as you say to people who haven't experienced, is that obviously you're allowed to have conversations with people about the weather, the local food, or the night out before, but you're not allowed to talk about the game with the players at all, right? That's a big no-no. So, we're wandering around, handing out waters probably, get some electrolytes, I don't know, but you're not allowed to be like, oh, is that guy in arc?
Yeah.
So you can ask how it's going, but you can't tell him
high level,
what to do.
How's it going? And they're like, yeah, good, bad.
Yeah.
Oh my God, or just look at the table, you idiot.
Yeah.
Whatever the responses they like, but you're not allowed to discuss the details. So the timeout is a couple of minutes where you get to talk about anything you want in depth, right?
Yeah.
So it can literally be, okay, we're going to walk away from the table so that
they don't hear.
Just talk about big things, or I think this guy can go in here, but then there's a downside, the risk. The example is perfect there, where I was hoping for a 17, but there's a play here. If it goes wrong, however, they don't break, and there's a counter charge here. Up 15 is a nice thing, but it might be an 11.
Sure.
So it is that time when you're allowed to then talk about the game specifically, and take whatever information you need at that point. I guess it depends whether you want to know how the team's doing, whether you should do something. Quite often I used to just use it to just talk my way around a problem.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that if you do have that timeout at a table, your opponent can then overhear what you're having in your timeout, and maybe they'll see something that you're talking about and react?
That's happened to me. While my opponent has taken a timeout, overhearing what they were talking about, I thought, oh wow, that is a really good idea, and seeing that happen.
Well, unless the rules have changed, I'll have to check. You don't have to do it at the table, right?
Sure.
You can be like,
Tom,
I was going to say,
I'm going to go walk over there. So yeah, I mean, but there is definitely that, and you'll see people. Yeah, and that happens, right? We're very strict on the no communicating on tables, and it's easier for everyone to know if we are doing it because we're all speaking English, but.
Yeah, that's the downside.
It's the reason all the conversations around the table have to be in English, because so you don't get the accidental, let's call it, person pointing out that someone might be an arc or outside of leadership bubble, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there is so there's always a chance of that. Quite often, not always, but quite often the timeouts are called when there's something specific about to happen.
Yeah.
So it's unless there's a trick that someone wants to run by you to make sure that it works, at which point you probably do your best to keep that secret.
Yes.
But quite often it is like, actually, should I just turn all my units around and march towards the corner? Because
this is the last chance for you to tell me that I need to change my plan.
Sure.
Because this is it, and that is if you haven't taken your timeout by that, you should never ever finish your game without taking your timeout. That's like absolutely catastrophic thing to do.
How long do you get for a timeout?
I think it's maximum is about 5 minutes, but I think as long as you don't sort of take the piss, then it's kind of okay.
Sure.
But
don't quote him on that. I think there's a specific time allowed at, but we'll.
It's quite a short time. I think it's like that bit, right? Yeah. I'll just give you some of it at the end. I'll say all the numbers, and you can copy in whichever one is the one.
Yeah. I'm good at editing.
Yeah. That ties into the point that was made earlier, though, right? Because if they don't know the situation on the table, and they go timeout, and what has happened before, and you'll see teams do it, is coaches proactively calling a timeout. They're just like, they're watching a game, and they're like,
okay, cool.
That's a big call because you're burning the guy's timeout.
So it can be called by either the player or the coach.
Yeah.
Once again, I'd have to check the rules, but I've seen it happen.
Yeah, sure. It might have changed this year.
You can't just kick him under the table and go, timeout!
That's probably,
Why does he keep checking his WhatsApp? It's that's a big call, right? Because you're burning their time out there, and maybe they were perfectly in control and saw what you think, what you've seen there. But there is a certain amount of, oh my god, kind of thing. But if they don't know the situation, right, and you go, okay, I need a timeout, and you're like, well, what's the VP count? You're like, I'm not, what's the score? And they're like, I don't know, and you start
you're wasting time.
Half your time's gone. Yeah. And then, so it's about timing that right, and it's odd to explain. Because I know it doesn't sound like much. Someone hasn't been to an ETC that did a couple of minutes talking to someone. It's like, whatever. And not all players need it, right? A lot of very good players are very confident what they're doing. At that point, they'll use the timeout just to
brag.
Brag.
tell their chats in. Yeah. I said again 18, I'm getting 20. Just so you know, a little present.
But we have seen, for example, so the opposite of that is in a game, in a round, where we had the opponent call a timeout in deployment. The coach told them exactly where to deploy every single unit. Turns out he made a mistake and lost the game massively. But they identified a threat. They're like, this is actually really dangerous. In the hands of a good player, they're going to come at you. Their coach was one of their best players. I think he might have been their captain coach. Same.
Sure.
And it's like, basically, I'm just going to deploy your army for you. You've got a couple of minutes to do it. It's going to go like this. So that you see that as well. So, the macro and the micro of literally move this model there, charge in this order, don't cast this spell, cast that spell. Our guys won't need that. But
nice.
But that is sort of, it's quite a broad thing.
Sure.
And these are really long rounds, right? I know we're going to play 2 rounds a day, but they're long rounds. And you're basically by yourself. You have you're prepared for the morning one. You have a bit of a break to grab some food, but really there's not that much time to talk about the second round is when it comes up and you're not expecting, you don't know who you're going to go. Okay, you got Switzerland. Then we get round. Here's what we feel about it. Great. You do the pairings.
And the pairings are within the round time, aren't they, as well? We've seen in the other videos. Was it 3.5 hours? I think something like that.
It's a long time,
which is longer than what you would normally perhaps have, especially in the UK. But that's everything.
Yeah. So if you combine, you're then actually not talking to the team that much because if you finish your game, you go off to go for some lunch, whatever. By the time you corralled everyone, the round info comes in. It's not very long before the game, so it can be hours at a time without really knowing what's happening. 6 rows across. Sure. And it's just being that communication. And we joke about the water, but the water is important. Staying hydrated at the table is a massive thing.
And in life. Everybody watching.
All the grunt work.
Sponsored by.
All the grunt work. That kind of stuff is really helpful. Though.
Sure.
Like, even if it's something like, can you please go and check with the organisers which of their team got a yellow card because they were really aggressive.
So
and then that might mean because 2 of our players don't particularly 2 of our players don't respond well to aggression, like that kind of verbal, so we'll try and alter our pairings thing. In a normal situation with no coaches, you don't have anybody to get that information for you. You just have to keep going. And then things like can somebody just go back to the table and take a look at the terrain map for it because I'm not sure which one it is for that one. While the rest of the team actually talk about like important things.
Yeah.
There's 1,000,001 little small jobs that really
just
can help.
sitting at the table if someone has to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, exactly. Just
we
making
all
sure that guy doesn't
trust our
nudge.
opponents, but it doesn't have. We've got some
Sure.
coaches; they might as well sit at the table, right?
So-
And
So in terms of, we sort of touched on it briefly there with the water and like the little bits and everything. How important is it, I guess, from a coach's point of view, to look after the player? Because I know you said that within the gaming and looking at the thing and just looking after them individual by individual. But how important is it to look after them for an ETC experience as a whole? Not necessarily specifically for gaming, but for the whole. I mean, you're out there for not just the 3 days. A lot of the time, it's a week or so.
I mean, I think it's in much the same as I try to split this into sort of pre and post ETC. I think England historically has aspirations. Whether or not we've ever matched those is entirely separate. Right? So I think the expectations, everyone treats the 6 games seriously.
Yep.
So the focus is very much on that during those
Sure.
things. And just on that point, I think it's important to know strengths and weaknesses and who needs what. Some players might need some space. Lunchtime they want to go for a walk for an hour and just be left alone. And these are very crowded, very noisy, very hot rooms. Right? Other people are less good with drinking beer than they think they are, right? And we're all grown ass, pardon my language.
No, you're right.
People, and you hope they can make that call themselves, but maybe.
They need help.
6 hours. Let's not get drunk. We should do that after.
You replace their pint with a pint of something else. Orange juice.
This is apple juice. Yeah.
Do that for the Scots team and it ends in violence. But anyway,
or a couple of the England players. I don't think we'd be particularly happy with the beer taken out of them.
An orange juice Jaeger bomb is something different, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a certain amount of keeping. You're on holiday together, right? People might get on each other's nerves, whatever. There's an amount of keeping an eye on that, right? Because people's humor is different, and hopefully it's never really very serious, but people do get upset about stuff.
Sure. One year we went to a restaurant, and it was very apparent that this restaurant was not going to be particularly fast service, and I was already a bit hungry.
Sure.
And I wasn't particularly happy, and I wasn't feeling particularly friendly with everyone. And Leggy, the other coach this year, he'd sort of decided he couldn't be bothered to wait either. So come on, Tom, let's just go find someone that'll do us a quick little snack. And there you go. Now obviously in hindsight, I realise exactly what he did. But in the moment, it just seemed like completely natural. Yeah, sure, he doesn't want to wait either. Let's just go for a meal. No, he's taking care of me, making sure that whoever I was sat next to wasn't also getting pissed off by having me gnaw on their arm.
Sure.
So like there's
and some people would jump at the chance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's little things like that as well. And some members of the team, they're really experienced, they know what to do at an ETC, and then that can be intimidating in itself for some of the others. So it depends on the individual.
Yeah, sure. And as a common theme, I guess, right, is for all of these things. That
of course. We're not punched down in a machine.
Yeah.
You kind of point that it's a weird title. You're right. Like coaches, if this was a football team, then you'd expect us to be in control of absolutely everything and bending everybody.
Unfortunately, we're not. I looked it up. It's a problem.
No, really.
Free will.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of that nonsense. My will. That's what we're going to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what you're saying about the sports, and I think that's a good comparison, because a lot of the things you've talked about here about within the team environment are also looking after the individuals, and I think that's pretty apparent.
The sports thing does work, because you've got to remember it's a team event, but it's more like the Davis Cup than a football team, right? So the tennis analogy works in that we're coaches, we can't really do much when you're playing. Right? Once you pick up those dice and the tape measure and you're at the table, hopefully X amount of time spent with the team and the coaches and everyone else has put you in a good place. And there's a bit of input you can put in at certain times, but it's up to hopefully helping each player be in a position where they can perform the best. Sure. Because it is an individual, must be the same with Ryder Cup, for example, whatever, sort of solo sporting events as opposed to team ones, because it is you versus one other person at the time. So that is, must be weird to be Djokovic's coach, right? You don't do much. You sort of sit there and presumably take a
Keep
percentage
playing
of their
well.
income.
It's definitely worse to be Kyriakis coach.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. But anyway,
He hasn't got a coach. He's never had a coach.
exactly. Very short time span, that one.
but yeah, no, I think so. So I mean, in terms of that, we've got you guys are trying to get the players into, I guess, peak form and all that jazz, ready for the ETC, but also used to that sort of environment. Have you got any sort of tips for players, or indeed for other coaches that for part of teams that want?
Don't give tips to other coaches.
Yeah, well, yeah, not yet. I'll release it
Don't
afterwards.
turn up.
Yeah.
But yeah, any
Like all your team's drinks.
yes, that's it.
Yeah. Before I do.
But any sort of tips for? We'll stick with players then for getting better and sort of things like that.
So there's a couple of things, right? I mean, and these are all things, once again, that I've not done at various times, but I think it's important not to overthink things, right? A lot of people change the way they play completely when they get to ETC.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we talk about how actually, you can't necessarily play the same way as you do it as singles on ETC. But at the end of the day, if your team goes out there and they just win more games than the other team, the odds are, it's a totally not system, but the odds are you'll win the whole ETC, right? If you just keep doing it. So it's sometimes not overthinking and go play the game. It is one of them. I think there was some terribly tedious in-depth analysis done of an ETC sort of 5-6 years ago now, where it's exactly that was shown. It's like, against good players, sometimes people play differently and they suffer as a result. So go out there, play, and have fun, man. It's you make friends for life with this thing. I mean, it's not a coaching thing, but there's some great friends that you hopefully, life is somewhat back to normal, we'll see every year. And unfortunately, probably not much more than that.
Yeah.
But they're still friends for life that you make off the back of this, and it's just mad if you think about it.
Right?
Yeah, through gaming, the amount. I mean, and there's some wonderful stories that come out of it in terms of friendships that I've heard of people help others kick addictions when they found out that they were in trouble and offer spaces to stay because they live near a clinic in their country. Yeah, which is ridiculous.
That's incredible.
But yeah, I think the thing that in terms of advice to players, the best thing is like Raf said, is have fun. Yeah. I mean, if you're like a player who wants to go to ETC, you maybe think, that means I need to just engage hard mode and treat it like a job and be analytical. Like, no. You're not going to get results if you're not enjoying it. It is a game.
Sure.
And there's a guy, on the team now who I can remember a few years ago when I was on the team and he was asking me, what should I do? And it was like, I don't know if you're enjoying your games as much. Like every event that I've seen you at the last sort of 4 or 5 times, you have basically the same list. That can't be the most fun ever. Try something else. Try something different. Pick another army.
Sure.
Just enjoy your hobby again. And he did. He bounced around a few different armies. Really, again, I'm not saying he'd lost his love of the game, but really did realize why he likes the game.
Sure.
And is now the team. So enjoy the game that you're playing because you're not going to get your best results without that. Don't take it too seriously because, again, it's a team. We've got to go out there on holiday together and have fun and enjoy it. So if you are, not getting along well on a personal level with members of the community, the wider community, even if they're not necessarily on the team, that's the kind of stuff that'll get picked up at events. And that will become a question when next year's captain starts to pick his team with the coaches he picks. He'd be like, well, is so-and-so, they're getting the results. And they're like, yeah, but he's an absolute dickhead. No one likes him.
But most importantly, win.
Yeah, I mean, that as well. Enjoy.
I think that's...
the best thing, if you just enjoy winning, if that's the most fun, then there you go.
Right. So
done.
Do what you enjoy, but mostly win. I think that's a good. Winning. Yeah, I think that's a very good place to end today's. Mainly because I know that I could just keep throwing questions at you, and I would, and I might still after we stop recording. But I just want to say thank you very much, guys, for coming on. It's been wonderful from my point of view just to listen to you and things, and I hope it has been for everybody else watching. I guess from that point of view, if you've got any other questions, I do have a direct line that I'm now going to abuse. But no, I say thanks very much for coming on, answering those questions, giving people some tips, and just a general insight into what a coach is, which some people might not necessarily know. I'm sure I know that there is a sort of mini plan to do a review but that'll depend on how we get on, right?
If anyone wants to talk to anyone after the event,
I will do a
Yeah,
review.
yeah, yeah.
Very happy to do a review. It's
Yeah.
that's where the true feelings about things come out.
Absolutely.
Burn all those
I'll
bridges.
do
Yeah.
shots from the trophy we're going to win on the show.
Exactly.
absolutely, yeah.
And
Good luck with it all.
Gents.
very much good luck. Any final words to Luxembourg, our first opponents?
Luxy, who?
Nice.
Get your own language.
That's it, mate. Yeah.
Not borrowing it from neighbours.
I once accidentally drove through Luxembourg. That's all I remember about them, really.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we say thanks very much. Good luck to yourselves. I hope you enjoy it. And the thing, I'm sure you will. It sounds like you will. We very much look forward to seeing how you get on and hearing about it. When
And
you
find
come
out
back.
who's head coach at the end.
Yes.
The big question.
Thank you. Yeah.
We know.
But otherwise, apart from that, we're all done here. See you later.